Thank you, Mr. Swaggle, for being here. I want to build off what some of my colleagues have been talking about the deficit. Here we have the 2021 deficit, the second highest in American history, was $517 billion over CBO's estimate. Yet the Biden administration is trying to tout this as a deficit reduction. I mean, honestly and sincerely and seriously, do you think we're stupid?
I don't think I should answer that question.
Okay, well, don't answer it then, but we're not. I will tell you, it's just ridiculous. Here we have the $2.78 trillion deficit, that it's almost 3 times the average $1 trillion 10-year average deficit. And yet they're saying it's a deficit reduction. It just baffles me that someone could possibly even think that or say that. But let me ask you this: what was the largest contributor to the deficit growth between last year's projection and this year's?
There was some new legislation that was enacted. It was both the Investment Infrastructure and Jobs Act, and then the FY22 appropriations that were passed earlier this year. And so that was new spending. Some of that shows up this year, and that was offset by increased revenues, and then of course the pandemic-related spending that fell away. So that's why the deficit falls from is 2.8 trillion last year to 1 trillion this year. The combination of essentially the pandemic spending falling away and then some increased revenues.
Okay, well, let me ask you this: has the administration or the democratically controlled Congress, either one of them, have they taken any steps to stabilize our debt or to deal with the dramatic disparity that we are witnessing right now between our growing spending and the revenues that fail to cover that spending?
The fiscal trajectory is challenging, and so that that is essentially, I think, the message of the report we released yesterday, that choices need to be made. It's not not that this year there's going to be a crisis, maybe not even by the end of the 10 years, but the trajectory is challenging and will drive the need for choices to be made.
We all know that inflation has gone up every month since this president has been in office. I guess you could make the argument maybe it ticked down a couple of points or a couple of tenths of a point last month. It went from 8.5 to 8.3, but I can assure you, you're going to see it go back up again this month. But every month, when Joe Biden went in office, when this president went in office, the inflation rate was 1.7%. Now here we are at 8.3, 8.5%. We don't have a revenue problem. What we got is a spending problem. But let me ask you this: how much do you think we need to reduce the deficit to stall inflation?
So of course some of that is in the works with the reduction in the falling off of pandemic related spending, and the amount instances of contractionary impulse that's needed to reduce inflation. It's going to depend on the success of the Fed's efforts and also on the supply constraints falling away. So it's not clear. I can't give you a single number of what needs to be done on the fiscal side, because it depends on the Fed and on what happens with the supply side.
Let me ask you something. Inflation was at 7% in 2021, and it was at 8.3% over the last 12 months, and it's running at an 11% pace so far this year. The last time we experienced this kind of inflation, the effective interest rate on the debt was 10.8%. How does that limit our ability to reduce our debt?
No, it's an important challenge that as interest rates go up, given the increase in the debt level, that means that net interest outlays will rise as a share of the budget and a share of the economy. And that is going to crowd out other things or require action to raise revenues. And so we have a pretty moderate increase in interest rates, and that already has a pretty substantial rise in spending to service the debt.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but we had a 0.5% increase in the interest rate by the Federal Reserve, which resulted in $29 billion interest, an increase of $29 billion interest, just like that.
Right.
And don't think that the interest rate isn't going to go up again. It's probably going to go up 2 or 3 more times at that rate. And how much is that going to cost us?
Right. And we have,
I'm sorry, I'm out of time, but what's it going to take? What's it going to take to get people's attention at what's going on here?
Is that a rhetorical question, gentlemen?
No, it's a real question. And maybe you can follow up in writing for me. Tell me what it's going to take, because I really need to know. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your indulgence and I yield back.